Okay, guys, last one. Here we go. We're talking about adulthood. And we're going to go through all the physical, social, emotional processes that are involved in development of adults. So, what do you think about this? How has your perception of adults changed from young childhood until now? Do you have a different conception of what it means to be an adult? What makes someone an adult? How do we define that? Do we define that by physical changes, emotional changes, cognitive changes? How do we define adulthood? And how do you know someone is an adult? Is it their attitude, their looks, etc.? So these questions we're going to be exploring. Physical development, middle adulthood around the age of 50. Aging is the gradual decline in fertility, so it's the definition is focused on reproduction. Reproduction. Females go through menopause at around age 50. This is a natural end in their menstruation cycles when they're no longer able to produce children. This takes an incredible emotional toll on women. They're for a number of reasons. One, it's a psychological thing of this concept of no longer viable, right? No longer able to produce children, so no longer physically viable. And while we tend to now value women as more than just vessels to create babies, that's still something that the female mind has to go through. And another reason is that we have a significant decline in estrogen production. Men, we have a sperm count decline, and sorry you can't see that, it says testosterone level decrease. But sperm count decline does not indicate that they are no longer able to reproduce. There's a 90-year-old man that had a baby earlier this year. So it just depends on whether or not that sperm can make its way down the canal. All right, later life. So society is focusing on retirement homes, nursing homes, retirement funds because our life expectancy is increasing. Traditionally in our societies, the elderly would just stay with their children because they're usually dying at age 40 or 50. And now, people are living until age 85, 90, 100. So this is really changing the social dynamic. And we're going to talk more about that later. Spirit and gender affect the length of your life. So women live longer than men. On average, it's about 5 to 10 years longer than men. And your spirit has a lot to do with it. So if you have chronic anger or depression, you have an increased risk of ill health and premature death. If you're happy, lighthearted, mentally healthy, you're more likely to engage in healthy physical activities, and that prolongs your life. There's the death deferral phenomenon, and this is deferring death, and this has to do with hospitals and medicine and our ability to prolong life. So if someone's had 4 triple bypasses on their heart, how much is too much, right? So what is death? The technical definition is when your cells stop reproducing. But when the body is frail and vulnerable to infection, this can happen rather quickly. Death can come along. So physical development. The immune system is weakened, which is why on this page the body's frail and vulnerable to infection, right? Making death easier in the elderly because your immune system is weakening. Your brain neurons slow down. So that firing process we were talking about, action potential, refractory period, and resting period, that entire process begins to slow down. It actually starts slowing down about the age of 25 or so. Your memory area, but not until middle adulthood, age 50 or so, does it significantly decline. Memory areas decline, and we don't really know what that is. We don't know if that means that you start losing memory or if the retrieval cues just start weakening and breaking down. And your frontal lobes decline in their ability to function as well, so logic and reasoning. Sensory abilities diminish. This is why you see a lot of elderly people with glasses, hearing aids, and why they cannot tolerate spicy foods, and that sort of things. Okay, dementia and Alzheimer's. So these are diseases that occur, and they don't occur in all elderly people, but these are a series of small strokes, a brain tumor, or alcohol dependence can damage the brain and cause mental erosion called dementia and Alzheimer's diseases. So Alzheimer's destroys some of the brightest minds in this country. It's a loss of brain cells and neuronal deterioration that produces acetylcholine, which is necessary for memory and thinking. Way back, I talked about acetylcholine and how it's been linked to Alzheimer's, and here you go. So stages of Alzheimer's is that first the memory deteriorates, then your reasoning deteriorates, then your emotions become flat. You don't really have highs and lows. It's really difficult to experience happiness or sadness. Then you become disoriented, which then leads into disinhibited, and then incontinent and mentally vacant. You're just not there anymore. So, as age increases, recent past events and events that happened a decade or two back are more likely to be remembered. So, the recalling names becomes increasingly difficult. Recognition memory does not decline with your age, actually. So, multiple choice tests are still pretty easy for you. Meaningful material is recalled better than meaningless material, however, just like with the rest of us. Crystallized intelligence. This is our accumulated knowledge and verbal skills, which tends to increase with our age. Older the wiser, right? This is why the elderly are so wise. And then fluid intelligence. This is our ability to reason speedily and abstractly. This type of intelligence tends to decrease, so this is why problem solving is a bit more difficult. Okay, so there's something called midlife transition. When people enter their 40s, that's what it is. And this is, the biological clock is ticking towards the end stages of life. So in the 40s, we start a process heading towards menopause and that sort of thing. So this social clock varies from era to era and culture to culture. And why do you think that is? Why do you think this, so midlife transition is not only a physical clock, it's a social clock. And the social clock varies from era to era and culture to culture. And what that means is our definition of when adulthood begins and, when elderly stages begin. So the social clock, this is culturally preferred timing of social events such as marriage, parenthood, and retirement. So what age is acceptable to get married these days? What age is acceptable to have a baby? What age is acceptable to be retired? You're going to find that all three of those is significantly later on in life than it was previously. And what is that? Why is that? Well, it has something to do with the fact that our lives are prolonged, but it also has something to do with culture. So let's talk about that in class. All right, adulthood commitment. So these are the things that typically tend to happen during adulthood. Love. There's an evolutionary perspective on this. This is a relatively monogamous pairing. Just makes sense. Monogamous meaning not an open relationship. So parents who cooperated to nurture their child to maturity were more likely to have their genes passed along to posterity than parents who didn't. So that's the evolutionary perspective of it. Couples who get married in a civil union often endure longer. Love that bears children causes children to absorb time, money, energy, and then satisfaction in marriage may decline as a result of this. So these are three different theories on love and social interaction, and how love is affected by commitments that we make to one another. All right, reflections on major developmental issues, stability and change. So for the first 2 years of life, you provided very little basis for predicting a person's eventual traits. As people grow older, personality gradually stabilizes. So stability and change is necessary for life. This is just one of the concepts that the book's going through. All right, that is the end of this. If you understand the physical changes that can happen during adulthood, what happens to the brain in late adulthood, and what the role of work and love in adulthood are, then you are all set to go on this video cast. If not, try watching it again or talk to me in class.